Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of Bring the World Home, a production of the Returned Peace Corps Volunteers of Hawaii. Bring the World Home is a program in which each week we explore the life and experiences of a volunteer who serves somewhere in one of the 132 countries around the world in which the Peace Corps has volunteers. Tonight we have Sharon Langford, returned volunteer from Malawi. Sharon, welcome to Bring the World Home.
Thank you,
You were in
Chip.
Malawi in 1966 to 1969. We've had a little chance to get to know you, and we'd like to share some of the wonderful experiences that I sense that you enjoyed in your service in Malawi. But before we do that, we'd like to show exactly where we are today here in Hawaii, and halfway across the world on the African continent is the country of Malawi down in the southeast section. You became a Peace Corps volunteer as a young woman, or
That's right.
right out of school?
Yes, yes, I was 21 when I graduated from college.
What made you interested in going into the Peace Corps, Sharon?
Well, I lived in Kentucky, and I had a childhood experience, maybe when I was 14 or something. My friends at church went to Africa as missionaries.
Wonderful.
And I remember the day they left. They came to our house to say goodbye, and that was a very memorable occasion. And I just said I would like to go to Africa after that.
Sounds exciting.
So, childhood dream to go to Africa, and I know I pored over the National Geographic magazines and read all I could about it.
And you discovered the Peace Corps and said, I'd like to go there, go to Africa as a Peace Corps volunteer? Did that?
Yes, the Peace
Describe
Corps
just briefly how that worked out for you.
Peace Corps was very new in those days,
Yes.
right? And someone came to our college to recruit Peace Corps volunteers. And I told all my college professors I was going to Africa, you know, to just prepare me. So when he invited us to go, I said, yes, this is my calling.
Before the Peace Corps came to recruit, you told your professors to
prepare
you.
me, I'm going to Africa.
You were certain you were going there.
Yeah,
That's wonderful.
Very certain.
And so Peace Corps provided the opportunity for you.
Yes, I applied, and it was at the time when people were going to Vietnam. So I actually was working at an Army base at the time, Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and so many people were going to Vietnam that I briefly forgot about my Peace Corps application. But one day the letter came, and I rushed to the university and asked people, where is Malawi? Where is Malawi? And they were very, very excited for me that I was going to Malawi in the Peace Corps. So I never looked back from that moment.
Well, tell us a little bit, what did you must have a lifelong fascination, or at least up to that point, long fascination with Africa. Tell us a little bit what you know about it, please, and if you'd like to use our map or our globe.
Well, for those of you who don't know a little bit about Africa, because I understand you were in Asia in the Peace Corps. So we have the northern part of Africa, which is all desert, probably the Sahara Desert, but a few other kinds of deserts around. The nomad people live there, and they live in tents, and they move around the desert, and usually have camels. So I believe there's still groups living like that today. And in West Africa, this is a very vital part of Africa. The people are very tall. I think they talk on drums, and they have a chief system. I think many Americans came from this part of Africa. And then we move down to southern Africa. And we know that there's a lot of wild game there. There's a desert over in Namibia, and South Africa we all know about, the wonderful political change that's taken place in the last decade there. And we come now into East Africa. And there are many beautiful countries in East Africa: Kenya, Tanzania, and Malawi. These are the 3 countries that I have lived in and I have worked in over 8 years, really, after the Peace Corps experience. And here is Malawi. It's a landlocked country, no sea access, but it has a very long lake, one of the rift lakes of Africa. That lake is freshwater, and it has fish species not found anywhere else. Mm-hmm. It is a very deep lake, with a huge crevice in the middle.
This was a rift of the tectonic plates, perhaps, or something of that order that created the void filled with fresh water.
That's right. There's Lake Tanganyika next, and Lake Victoria, which goes up the eastern part of Africa.
And the water source is rainfall and rivers, river-fed. Mm-hmm. So, well, you described this so wonderfully. What did you do there? You must have been a teacher.
Yes, I was in an education program. We were about 80 teachers going into the country at the time. Okay. We were trained in Syracuse, New York, and we split up when we went to Africa. Half of our group went to Tanzania and half to Malawi.
And you, just to backtrack a little bit, when you were in college, you were studying to be a teacher, and if so, in what field? What were you studying in college?
Well, you know, I studied domestic science. Back in the 60s, it was still a course, a legitimate course you could take. I think soon after that it was dropped from our college. But I thought this would be a very good grounding course for my life. I almost did history, but I'm glad I didn't do history now. And I had to study many things in science, many courses of science, and child psychology and interior design, so many branches of education I went into by studying that. And in the Peace Corps, they had a post already fixed up for me in a domestic science college. Oh. So I was very happy to
That's
fill
what
that
you
post.
ended up doing.
Yes,
as
they had
your
it
Peace
all
Corps
fit
assignment.
for me. When they invited me, they knew about this opening.
And so what were you doing with, and what age level were you working with in Malawi?
Mm-hmm. It was a beautiful school, not a remote school. It was in the main town, Blantyre, just on the outskirts. It was operated by Dutch sisters from Holland, and there was another
Catholic sisters.
Catholic sisters, and there was another school operated by the brothers. So, Dutch sisters from Holland. So,
this is middle school level, or
kind of middle school level. Yes, we had to get the children and the women ready. Women went to our school as well. We had to get them ready for a certificate. See, I think it was not the secondary certificate, the one below that.
Okay. And when you noted that women went to the school as well, was that not typical in Malawi or in Africa itself? Or?
No, we were a special school where women could go, and especially women whose husbands were away in school in Britain, mainly in Britain, and maybe studying in the government to be government officials. So these were women who needed to have more education. And that was a part of a greater grand design that these men who were off studying in a foreign country, they wanted to be sure that, I'm assuming maybe these men were going to be part of a visible government or society when they came, and they wanted to ensure that the wives would be adequate component ready
of that.
for that too.
Oh, well, that's very nice of them to have that foresight. How did you feel about that?
Well, they were part of my students. There was one moment, though, when I really warmed up to my students. It was a time when I heard that one of the older women's children had died, and I was very moved and touched by that. And I was a young woman myself, maybe 22. So I felt at that point I should go into the dormitories and visit the people more, get to know them better. and see what they were really like in their family life, hear about maybe their children or their parents or something. So I enjoyed then moving a direction closer to the people when I heard about that.
And how do you think they felt about it? What is your conclusion about how those people or your students viewed you?
Well,
and maybe you could tell us what you thought at that time, and if now, as a wiser person, a wiser woman of the world, if you think that your original perception was accurate.
Well, when I did go in the dormitory, I made a point of giving them some extra lessons in probably English. They always needed English teaching. So I would help them, give them more notes or review the notes more, especially during exam time. I would try and help them extra. And they said that I was a very good teacher. After that, they felt that I had gone an extra mile with them. So
you had won their hearts a bit.
Yeah, and so I have been an English teacher in recent years as well. And I do feel that maybe the personal touch with students is good, finding out more about them rather than just being in the classroom.
Your normal Peace Corps service is typically 2 years. Is that what you served there? And then you said you stayed on in Africa for quite a few more years after that, not with the Peace Corps, is that correct?
That's right, because in the middle of my tour, I met a British man and got married to him there.
Well, congratulations.
Oh, yeah. And my students were wonderful at the time. They loved to send people off with great celebrations and the dancing. So each class had to come and provide a dance for us as we sat in the middle, in it was our marriage celebration, and even the Dutch sisters celebrated quite a lot, so that was quite fun to go through that.
And your students and the people of your community, did they view your marriage as a signaling some kind of change in their relationship with you? Would that, I guess what I'm saying is, being arriving as a single woman and becoming a married woman, did that change your status in their eyes in any way?
Well, I would go to live with my husband. I didn't see very much difference. I still visited the dormitories. In fact, I lived nearby, so I could still be a full teacher in the school. After that, I had to be a kind of diplomat with my husband. He was editor of the newspaper of the country. So I had to then go to the President's Ball and go to all the embassies and wear beautiful clothes. So it was quite different to being a Peace Corps girl.
Yes, I would say so. And was there any problem that the Peace Corps chastised you for, or cautioned you that you were
yes,
your
there was
elevated
at the time.
status? Did that create friction between you and other volunteers, or?
No, with the staff at the Peace Corps, yes.
Oh.
So
they wanted to go to the grand balls and weren't able to.
Oh.
The experience that you had there for several years and beyond, how has it influenced your life nowadays and 10 years after that up to now? Do you feel that you learned things that you're still applying or that were valuable to you?
Oh, yes.
What could you share with our audience?
During my formative years, really, and I learned everything from African people. I feel the main thing I've learned was humility. Just in their greeting, they have a sense of respect to people when they even meet them. They have to have their head lower than the person they're meeting. So they will always try and sit down a little lower than you.
Oh, really?
And the women even walk 10 paces behind the men when they're walking along the road. And then the women will do a wonderful greeting They, their language, they have a kind of a word that means thank you or hello, you know, one of those greeting words that is all purpose. So if they were saying hello, they would do kind of a little dance while they're saying it. They would go, si como.
How delightful.
Beautiful word, isn't it?
Yes. It almost sounds Spanish to my ear. And so there, you say that one of the great things that you learned is the humility, which...
Humility because they're close to the earth. You know, even their houses are made of just grass, some of them. Just a simplicity, you know, they just need maybe a bowl and a bowl of cornmeal mush. That's all they eat, with a few vegetables. They go fishing in the lake. It's a very warm country there, like Hawaii.
Oh,
joy, just the joy of living, you know, how they play the drums and dance a lot. So just a joy to be alive, really, they have. A primitiveness also that I really value in people and myself now.
In what way is the primitiveness manifest itself? I mean, that's...
well, if a person cannot read and write, then they don't have the books and they don't have maybe the kind of language that is gracious and nice and able to sit in chairs. They just are themselves and raw and primitive. They live in their creation so well, in their settings, and they use everything around them to the fullest. The grass and the fish and the materials, their language has evolved. They use an adequate language. Their expressions are their own according to each people. It's not educated in a college or a school where you're taught how to do things as well, you know, from books. They just have different emphasis on their life, complicated maybe communication systems and greeting systems and rituals, like rites of passage rituals. It means a lot. Of course, storytelling under a beautiful big tree is very important to them. And the hierarchy in a village, the chief. Another thing that the Africans are fearful of is the witchcraft situation, of course. Witchcraft dominates them a bit, and the visit to the witch doctor and controlling each other this way, and fear of all the potions put on them and things like this. This still goes on a lot. So.
And well, your description of their humility and their primitiveness, was wonderful, Sharon. I really think that our audience gained some valuable insight just by your few sentences describing that.
Well, it's always wonderful to go out on the beach, be among the palm trees, isn't it? Experience just raw nature, the way we were created into it.
Yeah. Well, I think that when people hear the word primitive, they tend to devalue it or give it a negative connotation, when what I was saying is that you elevated it to something worthwhile, and I think that's extremely important in our day and age. Personally, I believe that that's important, and I thank you for sharing that point of view with us.
There's another...
that emotion really is what came across.
Okay, but there's another element of Africa. It's vitality. You really miss that when you're away from Africa. African people are just so vital. We understand that they don't eat enough, but they certainly look like they have a spiritual vitality. You know, they're just fully alive.
Can you expand even more?
It's really hard to, unless you go to Africa. I would say to all the audience, go to Africa and you'll see it. Yes, it's something you would sense there. It's just wonderful to be there.
It's a personal vitality that they experience and that you're able to sense, or does it spill over to you more than just sensing it?
I hope it does.
Do you feel vitalized in the presence of these people?
Yes, definitely.
You're able to...
Maybe that is an aspect of the primitiveness, too. Vitality.
And maybe somebody might feel, if they were a young woman in this vital, primitive environment, that it's fearful. Did you, and I'm quite certain that a lot of people, when they think of Africa, they have a certain amount of trepidation about the idea of Africa that comes from popular mythology, if you will, about Africa that Westerners are exposed to. Is there any reason, was there ever any time that you felt fear in Africa or in your time there?
Well, there's one time when I left the school and went away on the weekend, and I went down to the southern province, and there were a lot of mosquitoes there, and I thought, aha. And yes, 2 weeks later I got malaria. So there are some terrible diseases there that go through the population.
Okay.
So I did get malaria.
And that was easily combated with modern medicine?
Well, yes, the doctor came along and gave me an injection of quinine, and I was well all of a sudden.
And I understand malaria is still a great problem in Africa, and thousands of people die monthly.
That's right. So that's a fear that possibly you could have. Another fear is wild animals. There are wild animals everywhere in Africa. And of course, I haven't been back to Malawi in recent years. I understand everything's changed because of AIDS. But we would have hyena. We could hear the hyena at night laughing.
Just
in
like
the
in
near
the cartoons?
distance. In the near distance. They would be very much near you. Or lions. We could hear lions growling. Yeah.
And what is that like, to hear a lion growling when you're in the wilderness? I
had quite a long little walk from the school to my accommodation house, in which I had to go down into a river gully, and there were trees. I was concerned about leopards, I guess, in the trees, leopards. And I would always
being the prey
whistle a happy tune. That was my tune. I whistled as I went through that pit. So I had some, and I wasn't attacked. But if you'd go out in a car, you would definitely see the hyenas. You would be hearing them at night.
Yes.
And they are horrible creatures to be near.
Well, and so are you still teaching now in your life now? Are you a teacher?
Yes. I am a teacher. I've been to many countries since Africa. And I've taught English. And last year I went to tsunami-stricken Sri Lanka.
Oh, wonderful
and I went
you.
With a young people's group, for 2 weeks. But I stayed on and I taught in the local high school there. Taught English, and then I traveled around the country.
And are you still applying lessons and things that you learned as a Peace Corps volunteer in your life to this day? Would you say that characterize it as still having significant influence in your life or your presentation of studies to your students?
Well, yes. I hope I'm a better teacher than I was then. But I started teaching right away, so I have long experience in the teaching field. I would say my experience in Africa, of course, was with a culture that couldn't speak English very well and had so many different customs to myself. So I think I'm very sensitive to the peoples of the world.
Well, it sounds like it, Sharon. We really appreciate you coming to spend this time with us. It's too short a time. Sharon Langford,
okay, Chip.
Thank you very, very much for sharing these experiences.
My pleasure entirely.
We hope that Sharon's recitation of her times and life in Africa have helped bring the world of that continent back to Hawaii and to our viewers. We thank you all for joining us again this week's episode of Bring the World Home. And we hope that you continue to share your wonderful attitude towards life.
Thank you very much,
around
Chip.
the world.
Thank you. I will.
Very nice story to hear.